Welcome back to Amateur Game Review, and welcome back, Mason. It has been a long time since he's been on an episode.
9 long months, but it's good to be back.
Today, you've seen the title, we're talking about Assassin's Creed, and not a specific game, we're talking about the whole franchise. Let's jump into it. Now, this is going to be part of our series, Remake, Reboot, or Retire. If you're not familiar with the series, we've done a few episodes before. Basically, we talk about a specific game or a whole franchise, and whether or not they need to be remade, like is in the case of Resident Evil 2, or Resident Evil 4, or Resident Evil 3.
That's true.
Or if it needs a whole remake, like a reboot of the whole franchise, sort of like Silent Hill was going to get.
What makes this episode special, though, is this is an ongoing series that's already been rebooted once. The issue with the series is it has lost its way completely. It is completely off track, it is not what it used to be, and it's just not good.
That's some pretty quick just slamming of the franchise there. Do you think that that's controversial, or do you think that that's pretty much everyone's main opinion right now?
I believe, don't get me wrong, the new games have their fans, they do some things right, but to me, it's not Assassin's Creed. To me, it's like the McDonald's version of The Witcher 3 right now. If that makes sense.
No, it does. That's a good way to describe it. And you, actually, this was your idea to do this. You've been wanting to do Assassin's Creed because you're a huge fan of the series.
Oh yeah, I love the original games with a passion. So those were some of my favorite games.
Yeah, so tell us what made the original game special. What made you fall in love with that format?
Well, I love stealth games first off. And to me, that's what the original Assassin's Creed games are. They are stealth games at heart. It is Metal Gear Solid with Prince of Persia combined into one. And you had to interact with the crowds. You know, like you could blend in with the monks, act like you're praying and all that crap. Throw smoke bombs, throw coins to distract like prostitutes or the guards, stuff like that. Now you can just walk right into a base and that's it. Like stealth is on the back burner. It's just not there anymore.
Yeah, now it's you walk in with double axes or a teleporting spear.
Exactly.
And you just handle everyone. And as long as your gear's good enough, you know, assassination's kind of not only pointless, but impossible to do on certain enemies.
Well, back in the old games, like, if you're going to assassinate an enemy, one hit, they're dead.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it was like a Juggernaut type of character where they're, you know, like heavily armored. But now, since everything is based off of what level you are, if you see an enemy and they're level 10 and you're a level 5, your little stick is not going to do nothing.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I remember some of the best moments from that game and stuff is planning out how you're going to assassinate someone, and the bosses literally took one hit.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay was trying to figure a way out to get to them, and then doing it sneakily and getting away with it.
Now, keep in mind, there were some missions where if you wanted to, you can rush right on in, but they're either going to run away, they're going to send the guards after you, they're going to be on lockdown, but you could still just one-hit assassinate them.
And so far, we've basically just been talking about our problems. Like, we've already went on a whole rant fest, but it's all been structured around gameplay, and that's for a big reason. The core of any game is the gameplay, and here it went from the beginning of the series and really what everyone considers the best Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed 2.
I will agree with that, but to me, this is going to be really controversial. My favorite game in the series is actually Unity.
Oh yeah, that's going to be really controversial.
That's controversial.
That was just an absolute bug of a mess of a game.
It was buggy, but once they ironed it out, it was a true Assassin's Creed game.
I think that, for the most part, the Ezio trilogy is kind of the high point of the series.
Oh, yes.
They were kind of all the same game, same gameplay and stuff, but like that's really where it hit its stride. You're talking stealth gameplay, assassinations, parkour, and really just my biggest thing about the Assassin's Creeds, which we'll get into, is atmosphere and the storytelling aspect.
Well, to go back to parkour, like you said, that's a staple of Assassin's Creed. You need parkour.
Yes. And it's not even just the parkour, it's kind of a strategic parkour because you have to figure out how to scale the correct way to get up some of these buildings and some of the tombs and stuff like that.
That is true. I remember, at least in Assassin's Creed 2, it was almost like a mini game. Now it's just all automatic.
Yeah, and you don't need handholds or anything. You can scale the side of a rock. It just right up it, and it's more of just a nuisance.
Yeah, so there was a sense of progression. Like
afterthought, that's what I was going for. It's sort of an afterthought.
Yes, exactly. Before, it was almost like a mini game of some sorts. Like, okay, can I scale this? Can I not?
And now it's more about the open world, and there's less room for climbing buildings when you're more worried about horizontally, let's make this as big as possible. Really what they've went into is an RPG, and that's not just like they've transitioned to an RPG, that's what they're going for. They've said it in interviews, like, we're really trying to make Assassin's Creed more of an RPG. And don't get me wrong, there are some games that are decent games. Like, think about Valhalla. Just, it's not an Assassin's game. You can take your shield, you can take your axes, you can take your big weapons, and you go into the battlefield and you kill people. Just make that a Viking game and don't call it Assassin's Creed. Much better game.
I felt the same way years ago with Assassin's Creed 4. Black Flag, where you're a pirate. The naval combat was great, don't get me wrong. I loved it. You don't become an assassin until the very end of the game. You're not an assassin, you're a pirate.
Yeah, and that was, again, that's a really good game.
I agree.
But it's not necessarily an Assassin's Creed game. It feels to me like it has been for a while more of like a, let's use the title to sell copies. But let's move on. So we've touched on gameplay, we've touched on parkour. Let's talk about the atmosphere, and that's to me what I think really makes Assassin's Creed. The crowd and the movement, and then hiding in amongst people. You're in a city. You're not in this huge open world landscape, and you used it's a very common comparison, but The Witcher. That's what they've went more towards, and that's exactly right. Everyone says, oh, it's a Witcher copy. That's because everyone's right. Yeah. That's what it is.
They've said in interviews, hey, this is inspired by The Witcher.
Yeah. And to me, they're missing that. Put me in an area with people, let me blend in, let me work on what actually matters, the assassinations part, and let me learn their story and let me be an assassin. The game's called Assassin's Creed. What they've lost is the assassins part and the creed part. Because there's no code of honor that they're following anymore. Half the time there's not even Templars.
No. That's something else that bothers me, at least with the story. Origins made sense. It's the origins of the Assassin's Creed. I could kind of work with that if not a real creed or something.
Yeah.
Then you have Odyssey, which is even further back in time.
Yeah, what's the point of Origins?
Yeah,
if you're going to make a game.
Origins is the origin, what is Odyssey?
Odyssey is your god and you can teleport with your spear.
Exactly. To me, I think Odyssey is really where the series went wrong. At least in Origins, it felt like you still had some stealth. It was watered down, don't get me wrong. But Odyssey was really the McDonald's Witcher of the series. That's where it began.
Yeah, I think it went wrong farther back than that. I think they started losing their way and trying to be something different. Syndicate is kind of where they started losing their way. Don't get me wrong, that's a good game.
Oh yeah,
but it started adding more and more features that were not designed around the assassination gameplay
Yes, I do agree with that. And to me, with the story, a big part of it is you're in a machine that takes you back in time. Not back in time, but you're reliving your ancestors' memories.
Yes.
I think we got hooked onto Ezio because he got 3 full games. Desmond got 4 games. I could care less about who the new person is.
Yeah, well, it also helps that those games are good.
So
it's not just that he got 3 games or Desmond. I could care less about Desmond, honestly. That story got so convoluted, especially in 3. That's another reason that the whole series needs a fresh start, because that story is just... I mean, it's aliens and cowboys and Egyptians.
Well, yeah. I disagree with that because the aliens have been there since the first game. But it was there. It was more like just background fluff. But I do agree. I will agree somewhat that in 3, it really jumped the gun.
Yeah, the 3. See, I liked 3 as a game. I honestly really enjoyed it. It still had the Assassin's Creed elements to me. Anyway, those are the 3 main things right there. And this has kind of felt like just a bash fest, but I think that it needs to be, because this series has really, to me, lost its way. It holds a special place for me. It was one of the first next gen at the time games that I played. That's true.
It came out a year after the 360 launch, I think.
And I didn't get a 360 on launch. So Assassin's Creed was like, it was a brand new IP on a brand new system, and to me it was just like, oh wow, this is and you go back and play the first one and it's repetitive as hell. But it's still, it's not just all of that newness that it was at the time. It's still a good game. There's still a lot of stuff there. It's very interesting. And another thing that they lost their way with, in story-wise, is the assassinations, right? So these guys that you're going to get rid of from the Templar side, they had stories, and they had stuff that you figured out, and when you killed them, they talked to you, and there was like, this is what he's done wrong, this is why I'm doing this, or I feel bad for this guy, or that kind of thing. That's also part of the atmosphere that I was talking about earlier, kind of the soul of Assassin's Creed.
That's true, because the Templars aren't technically evil.
No.
I mean, they're not good guys, don't get me wrong, but...
Not all are bad, but there's some bad assassins.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
It's very gray.
It is. All right, I think that basically covers everything with the franchise. So, if, like we said at the beginning, this is part of our Remake, Reboot, or Retire series, where we decide if a specific game needs remade or a series. If it needs rebooted, start it over. Think like Silent Hill, like how they were going to do, or if it just needs to be gotten rid of, like just it's ran its course and it's done. So I'll let you go first because this was your idea. What do you think?
First off, this does not need to be retired.
I agree. It's still a very popular game.
Exactly. What I think it needs is it needs to drop the huge, gigantic land masses that the main story doesn't even touch on half the time. It needs to go small scale, stealth focused. If you still want, like a horse to mount and crap like that to get to different places, whatever, that's cool. But the stealth needs to come back.
So what are you thinking? A remake of like a specific game and then start from there? Or do you think the series needs to be just rebooted?
That's the tricky part. Because the first 3 games to me that is the main trilogy. I don't think they need a reboot per se. I think it just needs kind of like a remake maybe. What I think I would do if I were director of the next installment of Assassin's Creed, I would remake the first game, take out the repetitiveness of the first game. Maybe throw in some more variety, but keep the stealth. Maybe if you want to keep it more open world, take out the loading screens. Like how as soon as you left the Assassin's headquarters, it would load, and then suddenly you're in Jerusalem or Damascus, wherever. You can have it all flow.
I get what you're saying, and that is a valid way to do it. Like remake the first game or whatever. To me, I think this needs rebooted. You're right; it doesn't need to retire. This is far too popular of a series. It's not just that the name is a cash grab. It's that it still has fans, and they still want this. But I think what they want is more of the older style Assassin's Creed.
Yes.
I think what they need to do is not start fresh. I think that they can keep the first 3 games or whatever, and how they kind of tried to do last time, a soft reboot of the series and do Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yes.
They need to do something like that, but not RPG, not necessarily open world, more of a traditional Assassin's Creed game. Leave you in one city, or say what you want, and I'm gonna throw these games out there, but like The Last of Us, for example, that's not a big open world.
I'd also like to say, can we get through one video without Zach mentioning The Last of Us?
Well, it's been 9 months, so or let's just talk about the same studio, Uncharted. Okay. Like that's not a big. Those are very popular games for a reason, and they are just set pieces and stuff. You can have that in an Assassin's Creed game. It does not need to be a Witcher copy.
I can agree with that. I do think it needs some exploration. I mean, it's a stealth game, you got to have some exploration.
Oh, yes.
How to get to, kind of like Hitman.
Yeah, but you can have that within the walls of wherever you're at. Like,
True.
You can still have a playground, make it an open world feel, but just like you don't need to go horseback riding. It needs to be more city streets.
Yes.
Think when I don't know why I always compare this, but like Assassin's Creed to me feels like Aladdin. And what's that like? There's a marketplace with people all the time, like, out on the streets buying apples and stuff, and there's the buildings made of whatever the hell they're made out of back then, and you got people living, on top of each other. That's what it needs to be. You need to be in and out of the people, in and out of the guards walking the streets and stuff like that.
I never thought of that before. That's actually pretty.
Yeah, just leave out the actual magic carpet part, because that's what they started doing, was getting too fantasy.
There probably is a magic carpet in like the newer games.
Yeah, I mean, what you had sent me some thoughts earlier, and you had like it became unicorns and all that kind of stuff.
Unicorns, rainbow boats.
Yeah, it's just
stupid shit. Really.
Yeah, they really went way too far out there, and they lost sight of what they were. And I think a soft reboot, like they tried to do before, but this time do it right. I mean, that's everything, right?
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell the people who we are, why they should, subscribe to us, why we're awesome, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we are Amateur Game Review. I'm Mason. This is Zach.
That is true.
We need money to get out of the post office.
That's also true.
And because we make good content. Well, he makes good content. I just show up occasionally, like every year.
Once or twice a year. It's like a biannually video.
That's true. It's like a holiday almost. It's Mason Day.
Mason Day. Welcome back to annual Mason Day.
Awesome.
But yeah, like you said, guys, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment on this. Let us know what you think about Assassin's Creed series as a whole, and what you think they need to do, if they need to do anything. Maybe you like the way that it's went. But until the next... Oh, that's kind of... You're singling out our customer base right now, telling them that they're
I'm
wrong.
sorry.
He's
I love
not
you.
sorry.
You're wrong, but I love you.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, until next time, guys. We'll see you.